Hello there. Today I'll be looking at one of the many adaptations of the works of Agatha Christie. I hope to cover as many adaptations as I can find, as I've been doing with my Sherlock series, and we'll be starting with my personal favourite, 1982's Evil Under the Sun. This is the second film starring Peter Ustinov as Hercule Poirot following 1978's Death on the Nile, and this is a murder mystery, so I won't be giving away any spoilers. Although I would say the joy of a good Christie adaptation is that you can watch them even if you know who the murderer or murderers are. The plot of this film sees Poirot hired to investigate why Horace Blatt is trying to insure a fake duel.
Why should a millionaire industrialist perpetrate such an obvious fraud?
This mystery is quickly resolved when Blatt reveals he thought it was the real one.
Do you seriously think that I'd cheat the insurance company over one bloody duel?
Because he's a bit of an idiot, and must have been substituted for the real one by a woman he recently broke off an affair with.
Then halfway across the Atlantic she changed her mind and ran off with another man.
He now wants Poirot to investigate that woman, actress Arlena Marshall.
Do you know Arlena Stewart?
No, Arlena Marshall. She remarried.
Played by Diana Rigg.
Shock absorbers have been standard equipment on motorised vehicles for 30 years.
Who is staying at a luxury resort on a private island. We soon meet a host of characters. A journalist, theatre producers, a married couple, and Marshall's new husband and stepdaughter. It's not long before Marshall is murdered.
She's dead. She's been murdered.
And it's up to Poirot to work out the who and the why. The film takes a few liberties with the source material, combining or omitting some characters, trimming scenes, and recasting journalist and gossip columnist Emily Brewster as Rex Brewster. But it retains most of the key elements of the story and limits the changes to ones that make it work better for the big screen. One significant change, though, is it turns the glamour up to 11. Moving the setting from Devon on the south coast of England to the fictional Adriatic resort of Tirania, and decks out the cast in period 1930s costume that makes everyone look simply fabulous, except perhaps poor Hercule, when he's in his bathing costume. The costumes for the film were created by Academy Award-winning costume designer Anthony Powell, who won his first Oscar for the aforementioned Death on the Nile.
And the winner is Anthony Powell for Death on the Nile.
And here he was allowed to let his imagination and creativity run wild, never straying from the 1930s setting, but giving each character a costume change in practically every scene, with distinct looks that really help differentiate and give more character to each actor, which is enormously important in a whodunit film to help you remember who everyone is. Poirot balances the sharp, clean lines of perfectly tailored suits, echoing his fastidious nature, with his ridiculous holiday wear reflecting the humour that Ustinov brings to the character, but also suggesting that he knows nor cares about fashion, but is happy to spend money on his outfits and trust his tailor, even when he's led astray by something perhaps a little too modern for him. There's also hints towards the nature of other characters in their costumes, some explicit and some implied, as we see Patrick Redfern in a white dinner jacket, reflecting his roguish nature, something Powell would also use for the roguish Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. Both perhaps inspired by Sean Connery's white tux in Goldfinger. While the camp and catty Rex Brewster is first seen in a sailor outfit with a blue and red neckerchief, subtly suggesting his disposition. But truly, every character is given extra depth with each of these costume choices, including Powell's own personal favourite of all his many designs, Daphne Castle's bejewelled cocktail outfit. There's also a final costume that I would like to highlight, but it's a spoiler. So I'll just say that it epitomises the era, creating a shape that encapsulates Art Deco. The film also has a lot of comedy, from Poirot himself in the aforementioned bathing suit, but also Maggie Smith as resort owner Daphne Castle, who was on stage with Arlena early in her career as an actress and has an acid tongue leading to what I think are some of the best lines.
Oh, it's been years.
Well, a little time.
Years. Even in those days, she could always throw her legs up in the air higher than any of us. And wider.
She is not the only character who has a past with Arlena, as it seems everyone on the island has a reason to dislike her, even if they have to hide it. Theatre producers Myra and Odell Gardner, played by Sylvia Miles and James Mason, lost a fortune when Arlena quit one of their plays mid-production, but still need her to secure funding for their next one. Rex Brewster, played by Roddy McDowall, has written a biography of Arlena, but she refuses to give him permission to publish it because of some of the unflattering things it has to say about her, including how old she really is. Patrick Redfern, played by Nicholas Clay, appears to be having an affair with Arlena, much to the chagrin of his dowdy wife Christine, played by Jane Birkin. And Arlena's husband, Kenneth, played by Dennis Quilley, is also well aware of what might be more than flirting. To round things off, Arlena's stepdaughter Linda, Kenneth's daughter, played by Emily Holm, despises her bullying, wicked stepmother.
You heard the little man, Linda. Scram.
These connections, and indeed motives, are all slowly revealed to Poirot over the course of his investigation. The only problem being, despite half of the island seeming to have a motive, everyone on the island seems to have an ironclad alibi.
You mean nobody did it?
And yet we still have a body, madame.
I love everything about this film. The plot, as you'd expect from a Christie novel, is wonderfully inventive, clever and mysterious, and the way it's adapted by screenwriting legend Anthony Shaffer retains all of the requisite intrigue and twists, as well as doing a wonderful job of establishing the characters, the setting and the situation perfectly, while also adding to the original plot. Everyone is clearly shown to be a potential suspect, and they are all distinct and distinctive, in no small part down to the superb performances of some truly fantastic actors. Maggie Smith in particular gives a tour de force performance that shows her enormous range. She is hilarious in her verbal sparring with Arlena as someone who gave up on stardom but remains age-appropriately glamorous and self-assured.
Women fight like tigers when they're losing their husbands. Not that I've had much experience of that sort of thing myself.
Contrasting perfectly with Arlena, who is only treated like a star by people who want something from her, and deludes herself into thinking she's as big and as young as she used to be. Smith is equally brilliant in the more tender moments, with Kenneth, or the way she butts heads with Poirot in order to give Kenneth a fictitious alibi.
I saw Kenneth hard at it, so I just didn't disturb him.
But madame, you cannot see the desk from the door.
I saw him in the mirror.
She almost steals the film out from under the star-studded cast. Roddy McDowall as Rex Brewster is another highlight, as he displays obsequious devotion to Arlena, and pure bitchiness towards everyone else.
Isn't that the one that she walked out on after just 3 weeks?
You know damn well it was.
It's almost as if he's playing the role, unchanged from the female character of the novel. Apparently he modelled his speech patterns off Tallulah Bankhead, which I think works perfectly. There's a lovely moment when he's arguing with Arlena, and his mid-Atlantic accent gives way to a broad American drawl.
You're going to regret this, Arlena. That's a promise.
Showing his far more humble origins that he'd like to keep buried. A choice that, as a Brit, McDowall would have had to have consciously made. One of my favourite scenes is when Arlena gives an impromptu performance for the other guests, which Daphne attempts to sabotage, and which Arlena uses to demonstrate true feelings towards Daphne and Patrick.
We are Camembert. You're a new invention, but if they leave me, I am the bottom, you're the top.
The music is another absolute joy, using arrangements of Cole Porter music to set the scene and reinforce the period setting. It just makes the whole thing feel like you're in the 1930s.
How's your plan? Use it refreshing. No.
I see you don't deal with it in front of it. Do you know?
I know that Peter Ustinov's Poirot isn't to everyone's taste, especially Christie purists, but he is my favourite Poirot. While I think that David Suchet is probably the best Poirot, I just really enjoy Ustinov's performance. Just as pompous and idiosyncratic in his ways, he also brings a surprising warmth to the character that really works when he's trying to dissuade people from doing anything silly.
A woman must have either goodness or brains. Your husband loves you.
And while he is pompous, he also has a razor-sharp wit, often missed by the English snobs that he's speaking to, who just think of him as a silly foreigner.
Well, it used to make the boys laugh when I was trying to din some Latin into them.
Little boys laugh easily if it keeps them away even for a moment from their study of Latin.
The film is all brought together marvellously thanks to the direction of Guy Hamilton, an experienced director of thrilling films with lashings of wit, and this is shot like an artwork, making each location look incredibly glamorous, and using the sets to frame the characters, sometimes like full-length portraits. Christie's work has often been described as cosy murder, in that while some of the things that occur would be horrific in real life, in the comfortable setting of her stories there is a coziness to them that allows the reader to enjoy the mystery in spite of the crime. I would call this adaptation a glamorous murder, where we are carried through this romp with humour, style and beauty in spite of the grisly murder at the centre of it. And I think that's why it also has enormous rewatch value. It's one of those films where you enjoy being in the company of these people in this location, despite some of the horrid things that occur, and the horrid people involved. It's also enormously satisfying watching Poirot wrap everything up in Ustinov's inimitable way, despite the fact that he's a minor player for the majority of the film. Or perhaps because of it.
Are you all comfortable? Even the murderer?
With him being a passive observer for so long, it really does allow the plot and characters room to breathe. Sadly, the film didn't fare too well on initial release, despite the success of the previous two Poirot adaptations, and the quality of the film itself. I'm not sure I can really give an idea as to why it wasn't successful. But thankfully, due to TV broadcasts and home media, it has found its audience since its initial release, including Rian Johnson, who clearly took inspiration from this mystery involving murder on an island of eccentric, glamorous oddballs and a strangely accented detective with a taste for peculiar swimwear in his Knives Out sequel, Glass Onion. If you haven't seen this adaptation, I would urge you to seek it out. For me, it's the perfect Christie adaptation that manages to add to the original story with its cast, location, look and feel. I mean, obviously this is a 5 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.